Good morning, everyone. Hello, Inc. Founders House. How are y'all feeling this morning? All right, I don't know if we can take that. We have Tecovas and Salt and Straw here. It's a lot of energy on the stage. You got to match us. All right, well, thank you for coming. I am Kayla Lawrence, Event Director at Inc., and I am joined by two leaders who are really killing it at in real life experiences, so I'm super excited about this conversation, and I'm sure you are too. We have David Lafitte, CEO of Tecovas, the fastest growing Western brand, born here in Austin, Texas as well. And then we have Kim Malek, co-founder and CEO of Salt and Straw, the renowned ice cream brand taking the country by storm, one shop and one flavor at a time. Well, with that said, let's dive right in on why in real life experiences still win. So for years, the narrative has been that everything would move online. I'm sure we were certainly believing that in 2020, but yet there seems to be major retailers who are investing billions right now into renovating and expanding physical stores again. So what do you think has changed in consumer behavior that brought people back into real world spaces? So David, I'll start with you.
Yeah, thank you. First of all, thanks for having me and delighted to be here. I think it depends for different brands. For us, we started as a digitally native company in 2015, kind of known as the Warby Parker of cowboy boots at the time. I think over time, I'm not sure it's the consumer drove some of it, but the companies as well, because when you're digitally native and you're going direct on e-com, you tend to become the middleman, which also brings a lot of problems. But for our brand, unit economics for one, a cowboy boot is a dead fit. There's no shoelaces to kind of adjust your fit. So returns alone, a lot less in a retail environment versus online. So trying to drive people to our store is incredibly important for the unit economics, but also it's really where the brand can come to life. And so we do want that experiential environment, which I'm sure we'll get into a little bit. But there's multiple reasons, though.
Yeah. How about you, Kim? What are you thinking?
Well, I originally started Salt and Straw in 2011 to create community gathering places. So this idea that everything was going to go digital and wipe out community would have been tragic for us.
Right.
But, we have an epidemic of isolation and loneliness in the world. I mean, there's story after story after story of that. And so people want that human connection. In fact, they need it. We need it. And our mission at a company is to create happiness through moments of wonder. That's why we started the company. And we're about to have a wedding in one of our shops because two people met in line. Like, what happens in line at Salt and Straw can be pretty magical. Someone told me the other day they got their dream job. They met a guy standing in front of them in line at Salt and Straw. So, like, these human connections, where can you go and see parents with their 17-year-old kids? Like, where can you do that? Like, ice cream brings people together, and we've designed our menu very intentionally, even our supply chain, the way we train our teams to facilitate a human connection. That's why we started the company, and turns out we need that in the world more than ever right now.
I mean, we saw people get married at the Super Bowl in February. Now we're seeing people get married at ice cream shops. I wonder what's next. Tecovas?
Definitely some engagements in our store, including reveals on twin children where they were branding the boots and didn't know what they were having until they opened the package. So we've had those moments as well, and I couldn't agree more, Kim, with what you've said. Yeah.
I mean, experiences are clearly at the core of your brand, and cowboy boots and ice cream, they're not new concepts. They're actually pretty mature markets. So why is it important for you to have experience design as a lever to reinvent and separate yourselves in the market?
Yeah, I think it's important. We want people to come to Tecovas and not only be the value proposition of the product, but we want them to come to a store and leave with a story or an experience that they're overwhelmed by. And so in our store, when we started, we have a bar in every store other than one, serving complimentary alcoholic, non-alcoholic beverages. We do a lot of personalization on branding of boots, on hat bars, to the point where about 25% of the transactions in a store have some form of personalization. That obviously increases the dwell time, so people are getting their boots branded, having a drink. And to Kim's point, it's almost become sort of a third place community when people come into our stores, a lot of our store associates know them. And so it's almost, they check in to see what else is new in the store and just to say hello. You know, like Kim, we spend a lot of time on training retail associates on, you know, everything about the brand, the products. So they're very approachable. If you go into a lot of stores selling boots, you may have a wall of boots, and it's a little bit overwhelming, particularly if you're a first-time cowboy boot buyer. So getting that education, and it's not a hard sell, and if you want to have a drink and think about it and come back in a month, that's great too. You know, so but we want to welcome people in and just be very approachable. So very intentional about all of this, just as Kim mentioned.
Yeah, I love that. Just if you want to have a drink and think about it and come back.
Yeah.
I mean, that's definitely our MO. We opened in Disneyland. We have a shop at Disneyland, and they say it's the busiest ice cream shop in the world.
Wow.
And we replaced another ice cream store that was there before, and we do a little more than double what they had done. And we really attribute it to the fact, I mean, we change our menu once a month. Our whole supply chain is set up to do that. And we actually work with our team when you go to place your order to say, like, hold on, there's one more flavor we think you might like. You know, we talk about being a generous brand and tell our team, like, if you can give away as much ice cream as possible, that is how we will win. And it's sort of like contradictory and blows people's minds, but that's really at the root of all the decisions we make. How can we be a generous brand and have people leave with more than they came for? And we're not really here to sell ice cream. We're here to sell this experience. I mean, you said last night that someone had, you were going to bring them the boots to their hotel room because they were really famous. And instead they said, no, I want to come to the shop. Like, that's that's everything.
Yeah, I love your comment too about the supply chain and everything working towards that, like being nimble about your menu. Our product team, for example, now makes products knowing that we've got to have places on the boots, whether it's the pull tab or on the jeans on the back leather patch, where you can brand it and, you know, and personalize it, because it's become such a big part of the experience. So, but you've got to have the whole company thinking in that way. And we do preach this concept of radical hospitality. Again, it's just making sure people feel great about it and have a great experience. So they're spending a lot of money, and we want to make sure that they feel not only the value of the product, but the experience.
Yeah.
And as a person.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. You know, we'll get to radical hospitality in a bit, and I love what you mentioned, third spaces as well, because that's a part of it. But for the founders in the room, what would you say is the best stage to invest in real life experiences? Might be a little bit of bias there, but definitely want to hear your insight. And is it something that founders should prioritize early or wait until there's like a solid base?
I'm going to let you take that as a founder, because you started it.
I'm a founder. Yeah, I'm a crazy one. I mean, it was in our business plan. In fact, speaking of being crazy, I remember I sent our business plan out to many investors, and someone mailed it back to me in the mail in a manila envelope, and I opened it, and it had red ink all over, and it said, "You can't do this. Who do you think you are, Starbucks?" I burned it, I think, just because you can't get that negativity into your jeans. I should have framed it. I talked to Howard Schultz later, a couple of years later, and he was like, "Well, you should have called me." So, but a key reason they said that is because I had built all of this into the business model, which I think you have to do. Like, if you're going to be overly generous, it's fine. You can craft your company that way and craft the business model that way. Overly generous to your team, overly generous to the community that you're a part of, to the people who you're buying your products from, the artisans. And it might not look like it makes sense on its face. And that's where, as a founder, like, you're making that decision. You hold, the reason I'm doing this is not to make a bunch of money selling ice cream. That's not the basis of our business plan. So I think, you know, crafting the company with that way and being really clear about what your intention is everything.
Yeah.
I agree with all of that. And again, I do think it depends on your product. Tecovas went pretty early, founded in 2015, stores opening in 2019. And then signed about 7 leases, and COVID hit. And so, you know, kind of a tough moment. It's not for the faint of heart, I will say. You know, you're signing 7-year leases. They eat at night, during the day, et cetera, so that you're always paying them and there's no getting out. So I think you do have to be very intentional about it. And what we've committed to, just like a marketing budget, it's so easy to go tap a marketing budget if you need to cut expenses as opposed to other things. But retail, similarly, we've got to continue to invest in retail associates, and if you're not training them well and leaning into it, and you've got people walking in your store and they're looking around looking for help, that's a no-win situation, in my view. So you either have to go for it and do it right, or maybe find other ways to do it, whether it's a pop-up and you test things first, is one good method that the Hoka brand was before. We did a lot of pop-ups and activations, events. That's a little more of an agile way to do it without committing to a long-term 7-year lease. But I do think a flagship here and there really is what brings a brand to life if you're in a footwear or apparel type scenario, and ice cream as well. It's that sensory tactile thing about product. You know, if you're spending $300 on a pair of boots, people want to pick it up, feel it. You walk in our doors, you smell the leather. And similarly with ice cream, I'm sure, people want to taste the different.
Cones.
Yeah. And it's a little hard to have that experience come across digitally only.
Yeah, no, you're exactly right. I met with someone who was the past president of Ben & Jerry's, and he was like, gosh, I have these meetings all the time, and typically people come in and they're barely making it with their shops, and they're just hoping grocery's going to save them. And you're exactly the opposite. You're not in any grocery stores, and your stores are extremely successful, astronomically so. And it's really thinking of your leases and your people as your marketing budget. I mean, that's where we put our money where our mouth is.
And being picky, you know, you can't just settle for a location. Location is so important. And so we've got a pipeline of stores we want to open, but if we're not line, we need to wait because it's too easy just to say, well, let's just get another door open. That's where things start to unravel. So whatever your financial guardrails are, whether it's payback periods and how much you're going to spend in the CapEx up front to make the store right, all of that, you've just got to be very disciplined about.
Yeah, don't ever hope. Yeah. Like if it doesn't meet those financial criteria, when we're looking 3 to 5 years out on our stores right now.
I mean, getting back to that point of being picky, David, I have a question for you. You know, as Tecovas expands into different markets beyond its Texas roots, including your flagship store in New York, you've been very clear that you're not trying to create a New York version of the brand, but bring the same Western spirit everywhere. So why is it important for you to do that, and how do you maintain that sense of Western hospitality and culture consistently across all locations?
Yeah, I've talked quite a bit about this on just to maintain authenticity. I think if you start moving in other areas and trying to be everything to everybody, you get too diluted. And a couple of analogies. One is with Kim, which I love, but on Yeti, for example, you know, fishing, hunting, they started Texas, Florida. There may be a guy in an office or a gal with a Yeti cup on their desk, but you're not going to go market to that person for purposes of putting a Yeti cooler or cup on your desk. If you stay true to the core of what you're doing, those people will follow. And if they don't, they don't. But I do believe if you start going to try and create product that you think New Yorkers are going to want to wear as opposed to somebody that wants to wear a lifestyle Western product, you're going to dilute yourself and start throwing things against the wall, and I think it's a bad formula. I'll let Kim speak to it, but I loved your story about the menu.
Yeah, we actually, we opened in, to bring up Disney again, we had 2 tests, and as founders, you know, what you say no to, I think, is even more important than what you say yes to. And so when we were first negotiating our lease, and I didn't tell you this part of the story, someone in our company came to us and said, now, is Disney going to be okay with the way our people look? Because they've got tattoos and piercings and colored hair. And so finally I went to the executive team and said, you know, my team wants to make sure this is going to be okay. And they said no. And we said, uh-oh, because this is who we are. And, you know, our team is central to our entire brand. And they said, well, no, that's nobody on any property globally at Disney has tattoos and piercings and colored hair, so no. And I said, well, shoot, this isn't going to work out. And they said, hold on.
You said no to Disney?
They said, hold on. And, you know, a madness ensued. And they finally came back and said, you will be the first brand where team members can show up, as who they truly are, which I think gives a basis to this entire vibe and connection that we have with our customers. So then the shoe went on the other foot, and we're getting ready to open, and we tell Disney, our menu is bananas, literally bananas. I think we had like bananas and who knows? It was intense, and so Tabasco and bananas. Thank you. You can be in R&D. So we're going to do an Americana version for Disney because we think it'll be more approachable, and they said, oh, please don't do that. And so we opened like a month later, and it was during Halloween, so we had this matcha ice cream with candied crickets. Candied crickets, not candy crickets. And
that's like actual crickets.
Crickets that are candied. They're real high in protein for those who are tracking the whole protein thing. And guess what? It sold more as a percent of sales there than anywhere else, and this store has been phenomenally successful. And I think it just shows, like, you have to make those hard decisions to stay true to who you are, because that's what people are looking for. And we, I think, caught on this and actually have been leading this trend of like the democratization of fine food and having that accessible on a mass basis, where people have sort of fancied themselves a foodie because they watch XYZ on the Food Channel and they want to experience it. And so we were just on the verge, I think, of making a real fatal flaw, and thank God we kind of helped both of each other there.
I love that. It's a lesson in just remaining true to your brand. Yeah. We touched a bit on the sensory moments of experiences. And so, Kim, I would love to just learn more about how you've built sensory into your experiences, especially through rotating flavors at the ice cream shop. How did you realize that this ritual of sampling and exploration could become such a defining part of the brand?
Oh, yeah. So you can sample, we call it going around the world. You can sample every single ice cream flavor at Salt and Straw when you come in. So fact check me when you go in. And we change our menu on the first Friday of every month. So you can imagine our supply chain is like, wait, what? Like, we got to buy just enough and make just enough, so we're not sitting on too much, but we don't run out. It's just a nightmare. So we had to find the right people who found that fun. They're insane. And then on top of it, like, when you walk into a store, you don't see ice cream. Like, we don't have ice cream cases. It's all put away. We wanted it to be this transportive environment where it's almost like, am I at a local cocktail club? It's this beautiful environment that happens to sell, I think, the best ice cream in the world. And then when it comes to sensory, like, we really use that everywhere in every decision that we make. We just launched this really exciting collaboration with Taco Bell, and we went to the ends of the earth to pull that together. Literally went to Poland, designed this one-of-a-kind equipment to produce it, and it's all because it has a certain crunch that never goes away. Like, it's always crunchy. I don't know if you had the Choco Taco back in the day, but it would bounce. You could bounce it on the ground. This one is constructed in such a way that's really, really, really special, and you can put sauces on it, so it's customizable, which has never been done in our category. So, like, going above and beyond to create a sensory experience is kind of the cost of entry for anything that we do.
I love that. It makes me think of when I worked at Hollister, when that was a cool job, and they would spray the perfume through the store. You'd actually be doused in the scent. And so, David, I'd love to know, how does Tecovas incorporate sensory experiences, especially for a product like boots?
Well, I love that description, by the way, and the intention behind it, I think, is fantastic. For us, the product is about materials, the leathers that we choose, and so, as I said before, you kind of walk in our door and you can smell. But again, that's where it's important to have people who are knowledgeable about it, that can speak to it, because we're choosing leathers in many ways that are not going to be consistent. But customers need to understand that, because it's like, why doesn't my pair look like somebody else's pair? And that's by design in a lot of ways. It's not just a conformed material that we're using. So these experiences are more about again, the customization, personalization. So for us, we're trying to innovate on things that people would find interesting. The big trick, in my view, from an innovation standpoint, is how do you scale that? You know, because all of a sudden as you get lines forming and it's like, okay, if this is now going to take me an hour, you know, how do I address that? So operationally, you have to kind of think about it. And to me, a lot of the innovation is going to be, how do you do it in a way that customer experience is still very solid and not like, yeah, that's cool, but I'm not going to wait for an hour.
I mean, it begs the question to ask, how are you two thinking about scaling these sensory and personalized experiences, especially these are cult favorite brands. The lines are always wrapping outside of the door. How are you thinking about it?
You probably have a little bit more of a challenge changing your menu once a month, but it's everything from store floor operations to some of our new design on stores to make flowing of traffic easier. We just came up with what we call a runner app that our CTO using Claude over a couple hours. We just rolled out in our South Congress store, and it's simple, but all the associates are just like, this has changed my day completely. Instead of doing 20,000 steps, I'm only doing 5,000. But it's little things like that tend to make a big difference.
That is what you just said, is everything scaling. It's the people.
Yeah.
Like we have access to money, we can find great real estate, we can make lots of good ice cream, but like I said I'm working like 3 to 5 years out on real estate. We're working like 2 years out on our people pipeline, and we work really, really hard on that to invest and grow our people. That's going to be central to our scaling.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, that hospitality, it's one-on-one experience, and you know, with AI these days, I think people who are working in a retail environment, I think that skill set's going to be very important going forward. To be a generalist and be able to connect with people and collaboration with teams, that's going to continue to be important.
But it's every little thing, like how do they have less steps? Like how do I make that job super fun and interesting and compelling for a long-term career? You're exactly right. Every little part of their day we break down and try to figure out how we can make it better. And
opportunity, you know, so how do we develop them and show that you can become a store manager, you can become a district manager.
You go into HR or marketing
absolutely.
Grow into different areas.
We have an intern program where we only look at our retail associates. Now we've opened it up to a few from the outside, but of 20 positions we may have in any given summer, we're only interviewing our retail associates that have an interest in learning more about headquarters.
We do that too, and I fly around the country at least once a week per month. I'm in a market meeting with our frontline team. I meet with every single one of our frontline team. It takes a couple years to go through every store, and it'll get longer and longer, but keeping that connection is a top priority for me as the CEO.
And one on that too, I've seen so many brands that have sort of, well, we're HQ and they're the field, or that is a recipe for disaster. Those people in the field are the lifeblood of the brand. They need to feel part of headquarters. So that dichotomy between, you know, that's them out there, we really try and bring them in. And a lot of times we'll have all hands calls bringing all of them in, and I'll get slacks and saying, we've never seen this before. I worked at such and such brand. I never had a conversation with anybody at HQ. And that's a tough way to again, have radical hospitality in my view.
We have an all-hands call once a month with everybody in the company, and they can ask really hard questions and be part of the decisions that we're making.
I mean, can we dive a bit into the radical hospitality of it all? I mean, at Tecovas stores, you know, they're designed around radical hospitality like you shared. So how do you operationalize hospitality in a way that makes every visitor feel welcome?
Yeah, it's kind of been almost a rallying cry for the entire company, not just our retail experience. So, but I'll give you one example. We opened a Detroit store sort of October of last year, and for some reason, fire inspection or whatever, we had to push the opening date out for 1 week. So we made announcements to make sure people knew it was going to open on the 10th of October instead of the 3rd. Well, unfortunately, 2 young ladies didn't get the message. So they showed up, and we generally have a long line because we've got a goodie bag, and it's just a good experience for people. So these 2 young ladies came to the store, and they were disappointed that it wasn't open yet. So they went on home, and so we said, well, let's make sure they get a goodie bag for making the effort. And then we realized that they drove in from Canada across the border.
Oh my gosh.
And we couldn't ship to Canada. So 2 retail associates got in a car and drove to her house and delivered the goodie bag. And then there were pictures of the gals crying with our retail associates, and then posted all over our Slack channel. But that's an example where they didn't have to come to me and say, do you mind if we go do this? They just knew to jump in a car and go do it because of our mantra of radical hospitality.
It's embedded in the culture of the
Yeah,
organization.
and one other point, we don't do a loyalty program because I think it cuts against this concept of radical hospitality. We don't want to say, buy more of this and get points and come back and get more, or having our team try and identify who the long-term value consumers are. We don't know, and I don't want them choosing who to give this incredible experience to. So we kind of know who our great customers are, and we'll give them early access to things, et cetera. But I don't want to kind of publicize right now, and that may be a bad idea. We'll see, a loyalty program, because I just want them treating everybody that they deserve the same experience, regardless if it's a one-time or 20-time.
I absolutely love that, and I think that speaks to the idea of even third spacing, which we'll get into, that these third spaces where it's going beyond the transaction. It's not about I get something from you and you get something from me, but really building community and really defining the experience, not just for the consumer, but also for your staff, for your team members. And so, Kim, I would love to hear, Salt and Straw has become a neighborhood gathering spot with every city that it's in, where people can sample flavors and also connect. So how did you intentionally design your shops to foster that kind of community?
So I was a really early employee at Starbucks Coffee. There were 30 stores when I started with Starbucks. It was tiny. My mom felt sad for me that I didn't get a very good job out of college. No one's heard of this company. I'm like, I'm just going to make it, I promise. And what I was just totally electrified by, honestly, was traveling around the country, and we'd open a coffee shop, and the community would show up, and people were connecting with the PTA and just on a real grassroots level. And so in 1996, I wrote a business plan for an ice cream shop in Portland, Oregon, based on that idea that third place, you got to get your coffee, you got to have your food, but ice cream's just pure joy. And I thought that would be the perfect place to spark, community connectedness. And so that's what I based the business plan on. It then went on to lead us from 1996 to 2011 when we finally opened, because I am a woman and wanted to perfect it before I brought it to the world, which is a different panel. I think
For
we
sure.
have to have. But in 2011, when I finally opened our first shop, that led us to our philosophy around how we developed flavors, which are all very community-based, and that's why they change so often and tell stories. And it's just embedded in every single thing that we do and every decision that we make.
Thank you for that. You have something, David?
In our case, again, we kind of cut across. Some retail operators would say, oh, you can't do that. But in our stores, we average about 3,500 square feet. We've got some that are 2,500, some like the New York store, 5,000. But we create a lot of seating area. And a lot of people may think, well, you're wasting square footage where you could be piling product that, and stocking the store more in a way that's visually appealing. But we know that people want to come in and have a seat and, again, try on boots, have a drink, get stuff brand. And so even the seating and things like that really make a difference.
This is making me think about, I'm such a creative. I love how experiences come together, but there's always somebody in my ear saying, okay, how do we measure this? How are we measuring the success of this? How do we know that this is working? So how are you measuring the ROI for this experience-centric approach that you take for your businesses?
Well, for us, it's basic retail economics. So it's sales per foot. Sorry, the mic is sales per. It's probably me. Sales per square foot, four-wall EBITDA, the profitability. All the basic retail economics, and which are incredibly solid for us. But those are the guardrails we need to watch. But I do get that question from the capital markets folks on, you're sort of having all these experiences. They're complementary. As you scale, can you do that profitably? And we think we can. And I believe that the emotional connection with that consumer and that long-term value of the consumer, wanting them to come back and be part of the brand, is the big power behind it. But we also need to be very careful about those retail economics.
Yeah, I mean, I said before, we have the busiest ice cream shop in the world. Our stores do about 6 times the average unit volume of a typical ice cream shop. Like, we're busy, so the proof is in the pudding. But we've designed every little element. So, like, we have a deployment model that makes sure our team, A, doesn't get exhausted, and B, is kind of moved through the store kind of responsibility matrix in such a way that flows people through so they don't feel hurried. You know, we have a saying that we want to offer a moment of full-face attention for everyone that comes in, but yet, like, we're tracking our throughput and how, you know, and we can see, like, okay, this store, something happened and their throughput wasn't where it needed to be, and we can go back and figure that out and help support them to make that true. On the flip side, we've done studies that show the stores that sample the most are the most successful. It's just a fact. So, you know, it's again, it's in the numbers. We get asked all the time.
In our case, it's the bar bill is the highest, but that's the highest grossing store as well.
I'm going to start mixing in some alcohol.
Well, I'm sure we can talk about this all day.
I am just curious on one quick thing.
We're not going away.
We're not.
Just settle in.
Sorry, but how do you deal digitally, like with people wanting to just pick up and order online? That's where kind of Starbucks, it seems to me, lost the coffee house.
Misstep.
Yeah.
So we just started offering a pickup, but we have a person stationed there to help them and walk them through and get them anything they need. So what we're trying to do is double down on hospitality, even in our digital realm.
Great.
Are you competitive and they're beating us because they're clapping?
Oh, no. Not at all. Well,
she's just saying we're over.
Well, want to just start with any parting thoughts before we get off the stage?
Oh, gosh. I just, I started off by saying we have an epidemic of, like, isolation and loneliness, and it's causing, like, medical issues. So I think as businesses, like, showing up for our communities in meaningful ways and putting that first, I hope if you took anything from today that also makes good economic sense. Both can be true.
I love the fact that Western cowboy boots, et cetera, has a lot with ice cream.
Should be
just
a country
on,
song.
Again, the business model, things of that nature, to your point, that emotional connection is really important in this day and time.
Such an honor.
Yes. Well, David, Kim, thank you both for joining us today.
Thank you.
At Inc. Founders House South by Southwest. If you're here, please hang out, connect.
Great. Thank
Have
you
a
all.
good one, everyone.